If you think about what is the reason why women are looking for martial arts and self-defense, is because they want to feel empowered to navigate the real world. We want to learn how to defend ourselves so we can navigate real life. And that is something that enriches you as a person. When you set out challenges and you accomplish challenges, nobody can take that from you.
Welcome to the Hard Way podcast with Joe Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Races. We're teaching you how to overcome your obstacles in your life the same way we teach our 10 million plus Spartans to overcome obstacles on the course, with insight from the smartest, most accomplished experts from every corner of the world. Get ready to elevate your life today.
Joe Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan, host of the Hard Way podcast. I have an amazing guest on today, Cesalina Gracie, friend of mine. She's competed. She's from the Gracie bloodline, right? The famous bloodline. She's competed in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. She runs a club now. She teaches. She inspires. She just climbed Mount Everest. I have no idea why. I want to hear why. And she's going to teach us a thing or two. What's going on? Welcome aboard.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me.
How does it, did you have to live up to like some standard being a Gracie?
I think I was fortunate to be exposed to principles that for other people, they might look like high standards. And for me, it was just a gift and a blessing to have this inside my home as something natural for us. You know, everything from the way we eat, our consciousness with our body, how we react and respond, because if you react with disrespect, you know what you're going to get in return. And just the way we conduct ourselves is something that if you look at society as a whole, we could definitely use more of those principles. But when you're growing up, it's just normal, you know? There were different things that, you know, once you start getting more social and growing up, you realize like, oh, not everybody does this. Example, like throwing birthday parties and then all my friends come and there's no soda, there's, you know, no sugary beverages or any junk food. And everyone's like, what kind of birthday party is serving watermelon juice, you know? So that's when you start realizing like, okay, things are different in my house, but it was never a bad kind of different or bad pressure. It was always like, oh, there's so much respect, you know, especially in Brazil. As I was growing up, my family was already established as, you know, the largest fighting dynasty in the world. So if anything, I think it opened doors and it created opportunities for connections and, you know, new friendships and a different way of showing people how we live and how they could also implement these things to benefit their lives.
I love hearing this, by the way. I grew up with a very hippie, forward-thinking mom in the 70s. And we grew up in Queens where cigars and cannolis and raviolis and like poor lifestyle choices were just part of life. And then my mom comes along and wants to change things, finds watermelon juice like you just described, right? And change like yoga, meditation, running, vegan. Parents get divorced, no wonder. And I kind of went through what you described, which was it felt weird because it wasn't normal. Like my friends had Frito-Lay potato chip, like, but she was right. And I guess, you know, did you veer off track at times? Did you want to go grab some junk food and say this is stupid?
I didn't really need to try something that I could see on other people that it wasn't working. You know, I think an important thing in my family was they lead by example. And even when we look at how people are conducting themselves these days, you see all these like coaches and experts, you know, that don't live by what they preach. And especially when you talk about raising kids and, you know, I work with young girls starting at 2 years old in my class. They're literally on diapers, you know, and I'm teaching them all these principles in self-defense and jiu-jitsu and how to say no and how to conduct themselves and when to listen and when to respond and all these, you know, behavioral things that allow them to start taking a little bit of control of themselves without having to invade someone else's space. And when we take that into our own lives, it's not like what we do is right and what they do is wrong. It's more like, let me look what happens when somebody does that. And I don't need to poison myself. I don't need to get drunk to see that I lost my awareness. And now I feel terrible and I have to do so much work to recover. So I've never seen my parents ever have a sip of alcohol. And we never really had junk food at home. So I would see how my friends responded. We were all athletic kids. I was put in every sport growing up, and that was intentional. My parents put us in tennis, gymnastics, swimming. The only thing that we wouldn't switch was jiu-jitsu, but they wanted to allow us to experience different environments and to be around people that when you have to perform, if your body is not functioning properly, you're going to suffer, right? So, and it's interesting you say that because when I was 17, I moved to London. And for the first time, I was still a teenager, and I was like, wow, I'm living by myself. And technically, that's the time in your life where you're like, now I have all the freedom in the world and I could say, screw this. I'm going to eat pizza every night, and it's when you finally have that taste of total freedom and independence, and there is a part of it that is frightening, especially if you're a young woman, like moving to Europe and not knowing anything about it, you immediately go back to that foundation that you built growing up. So even if there are things that you push back against, the minute that you are, old enough to make your own choices, having that foundation built is so important. And of course, we rebel against certain things. I think my biggest thing that I rebelled against was that I wasn't allowed to have sleepovers. My friends could come over, but I was never, ever in my life allowed to sleep at a friend's house. And that was, yes, reason for many fights. I would pack my bags and say that I was moving out, but I had nowhere to go. So obviously I stayed. And now that I work, with so many girls and women, that I'm exposed to all the statistics on female aggression and assault, and I see all the stories that happen, I understand why my parents were protective in that regard. So yeah, I think certain things that when we don't understand as kids, as we get older and we see the world as it actually is, we tend to be a lot more grateful.
Mom is always right. We just don't know it. So you're teaching, you have a gym now. You've got a bunch of students from 2 years old up to, I'm sure, 60 or 70 years old. What's the main lesson that, obviously people get physicality, they get to learn some fighting skills, but what are some of the main lessons you teach people?
Well, my school is just for girls and women.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
That's even better.
It is. It is a lot better, especially at this day and age where, women still feel very intimidated to walk into jiu-jitsu school. And if you think about what is the reason why women are looking for martial arts and self-defense, is because they want to feel empowered to navigate the real world. They want to have more control, more authenticity in their daily interactions. They want to feel safe when they go pump gas at the station. They want to go on a road trip and not feel like they always need somebody else to take care and provide for them. We want to learn how to defend ourselves so we can navigate real life. The percentage of people that want to go somewhere, get on your knees and roll on the ground and compete is very slim. In any school, by the way, you have you have millions of practitioners of jiu-jitsu around the world. And if you look at the percentage in every school, is like 2% of people on average compete. So, I competed up until I was 13 years old. And, that was highly incentivized by my father. I was kind of forced to compete, which is, I would love to hear also from your event later. And, if you would force your kids to do something and how much we should push them and how much, we should actually look into every kid's personality and then just direct it accordingly. Because for me, I never enjoyed competing. And that competitive mindset, which is so interesting because I am self-motivated, I'm a high achiever, I take on big challenges, but I never understood as a kid when I was on the mats why I had to beat that other kid just to show that I was better or to feel like I had any value. I didn't understand why that was something that would help me or that would make the world a better place. So I resisted competing so much. And my dad would literally drag me into the stadiums, And I remember one situation, I was losing the fight. I was totally fine with losing. And I was on the bottom. The kid was on the mount in jiu-jitsu, which is like they're sitting over your hips, so you're pinned. And I was kind of cool. I had 20 seconds. I was like, this match is going to be over. I'm finally going to go home. I was just defending. And then I looked at my dad on the bleachers and he is yelling at me from the top of his lungs. I will never forget my feeling as a kid. I looked at him and his eyes were red and he looked like they were going to pop out of his head. And he was like, you have 20 seconds, get out of there, explode. It felt like he was the one losing. And at that moment, something snapped in me that I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here. He's losing it. So I escaped the mount, I got on top. He actually turned to escape and I took his back and I choked him out and I won the fight. And I couldn't even wait, Joe, for the referee to raise my arm to celebrate. I ran to the bathroom to throw up. So was that a constructive experience for me? There's room for interpretation. I don't think it was, other than showing me that, that's not what I wanted for in my life. And I think there are different ways to approach competition, but that mindset of, having to beat someone up so you feel like you have any value, I think is something that a lot of kids experience. I have a lot of students that are in competitive gymnastics and other sports. I don't incentivize any of my students to compete in that regard, but I actually talk with the parents about this whole scenario that they're facing in other environments, and they actually start, losing the passion for gymnastics because of what comes with competition. So yeah, that's what my journey has been. And so in my space now in LA, we focus solely on real life situations. It's the original Gracie Jiu Jitsu curriculum from the first school in 1925, that my grandfather Carlos started. And it's the same techniques. It's how do you create distance? How do you increase your awareness? How do you use your voice? Your posture matters. How do you conduct yourself in the world? So it's really valuable lessons to be applied on their everyday lives.
I love it. There's a lot to unpack there. When we had our children, we have 4 children, we were on a farm in Vermont, and I didn't come from the Gracie bloodline. I didn't really, I didn't know fighting, but I was watching Kill Bill and I saw Uma Thurman had a Kung Fu master training her in that movie. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a Kung Fu master living with us, or a Gracie master, or somebody that could teach the kids these principles? Not so much, like you said, to compete and win, but to have total body awareness, to have confidence, to carry themselves a certain way. And I think I'm answering the question you asked earlier, which is, my thought was, between the age of like 2 years old to 12, they don't even really understand they're alive. Like, they brush their teeth, they listen to orders, they go to bed, they wake up, they eat. Could I incorporate what your family's done since the 1920s into their daily curriculum? And they won't even know what's happening. And before you know it, they've got like a 6-pack and confidence, and they take care of their bodies. And so that was my theory. That, the strategy was hire the Kung Fu Master movement. So it worked. And then we got into wrestling. On the competition side, I would say I'm a big believer, and I don't know how this is applicable or not to your story you just described, but I'm a big believer that human beings don't do the work unless there's a date on the calendar. So not that we could get you excited about the competition coming up, because clearly you weren't excited about it. But like, if there is a date on the calendar that the boxer or the fighter or the construction worker has where something has to be done, but like, you get your ass in gear. You know this better than anybody, right?
Yeah. But don't you think in martial arts, that's why we have graduation? And the reality is, if you are in a school that has a structured methodology, you actually know, okay, I need 15 classes for my first stripe. Then I need 30 classes for my second stripe. Then it's 45 until my next one. Then it's another 45 until I can test for a blue belt. Like, you have goals and you have coaches that are keeping you accountable. And then you have a community that is advancing. So you do have that feeling, oh, I'm being left behind.
But I would say, and I don't run a school like you'd, like, we're just having some fun here. I would say you're not going to give it 150% if there's not a fight on the calendar. Like I see my boys wrestle, right? Or the girls play soccer. And my 12-year-old was up on her own this morning, 5:45 a.m. By the way, she's our youngest. I've got, as a dad, we've gotten burnt out on the first 3. So we're not like as rigid as we are with this last one. And so really intriguing to me that she's waking up on her own at 5:45 and going for a run. And I suspect she's doing it because she's got some soccer games coming up that are important, and she wants, right? So like, yes, I got to get my 45 classes done to earn my belt. I think that's what you're saying. But when there's a wrestling tournament coming up that matters, I see them doing their third workout in the kitchen that nobody's asking them to do. You know what I mean? Does that make sense or no?
I love this conversation. I think it's such an important discussion. Well, there's different ways to train a kid psychologically. So do you want your kid to be motivated by external pressure and feel like they can only perform if they're drowning or if they're being smashed, or if they know they're going to be humiliated or embarrassed if they don't prepare? Or do you want them to develop the ability to be self-motivated? Because I'll tell you what, when I was climbing Mount Everest, there was nobody behind me, pushing me or trying to strangle me or competing with me on who was going to get there first. And actually, the people who approach the mountain with that level of competitiveness, if you come into the most inhospitable and extreme environments in the world with a competitive mindset, you're going to lose every time and you're not going to last long. If you're self-motivated, if you have the ability of making decisions under pressure, and you are able to assess with yourself, you get far. You get to the top and back down safely. So I think ultimately, when we think in the long run, what are we training them to do? Are we training them to recognize that the journey they are in is valuable and they are motivated because they love what they're doing, or they're only motivated to train because they have a competition? And I'm all with you. I do think that we need goals and we need to set a date on the calendar. Like, let's do a Spartan race. Well, now I'm motivated, but that's especially when you're making lifestyle changes, or if you are someone who thrives from deadlines. But even that, it's a decision that you're making for yourself and you're competing with yourself and your own timing. And then you have your community that is pushing you forward. But if you're dependent on the motivation of fear, and I hope I'm being like transparent with what I mean, is like you having a date, you have setting up goals, even having some sort of reward system for when you achieve those goals is super healthy. I believe that you conditioning a child to only prepare out of fear of humiliation, fear of not performing, or fear of losing is not a healthy way of building an adult that is actually going to thrive in any circumstance.
By the way, you and I are just learning as we're talking here. So here's what I would say, because I call it competing. I competed a lot in long endurance stuff. It wasn't really competition. All I had to do was get to the finish line to win. Like I just had to fight through, put one foot in front of the other or whatever it may be. But that was my competition. That was my date on the count, climbing that mountain or paddling that river or whatever it was I was doing. Like losing against the opponent of the river or the mountain could mean death. Could mean, you know what I mean? Like, so I had an inherent competitor. I've done 700 podcasts. I don't know if you know this little tidbit I'm about to share or not. I didn't know this. The human brain is designed to avoid discomfort at all costs. It keeps us from falling in the river or going out in too much heat, going out in too much cold. It's designed for 10,000 years ago. We now live the way we live. We don't need that on-off button. We actually need to be motivated to train, whatever. So if you believe that, let's just say you and I are aligned on that the human brain does not want to do the work. My argument is you do need the competition. I'm not suggesting the competition that you described with your dad screaming from, but there's got to be something that is overriding the brain's desire to not do the work.
I 100% agree with you. And I think where we're getting at is what you call competition, I call challenge. I think challenges in life.
Yeah.
Because I think challenge is something that self-motivates us. You are self-motivated to overcome that challenge. I think that when we look at competition, it's like it's me against this other person, or where is your motivation being driven from? And I think we're just getting into a language thing, which is so interesting. And I love this conversation because when you set out challenges to conquer in life, or when you set out competition to me, it entails comparison. Oh, I'm competing with this person in my firm to see who is going to be, the CEO first. Well, you are always looking towards that person to see where they're at. Are they ahead? Did they deliver that project? Do they wait until the last day of the deadline? Or are they working on something on secret? So every time you're competing against that guy that always takes the first place in the race, you're always comparing yourself to him. You don't know what his speed is going to be next time. And I think that's just too little of a motivation. And it's not, an inspiring way to live. But when you're challenging yourself, you don't care what their numbers are going to be. You are going to show up and you will actually have your best PR ever because you set out a challenge that you're going to conquer. And if there's more people there, great. They are in their own challenges. But competing to me is like, it's me against you for this goal. A challenge is there is a goal and I'm going to achieve it. And I hope I do my best and I'm the best at it. And if everybody else, took second or third or whatever it is, it's a way that we structure society to motivate people. But I would love for us, especially with children, to teach them to drive their motivation from challenges instead of driving their motivation from comparison.
I agree with that. And imagine if you could, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but imagine if you could turn the situation you described at 12 years old on the mat, I don't know if you can, somehow as a challenge and less as a competition. And then I would say, I've met a lot of high level wrestlers in the senior circuit. So at the level, that your family comes from, gold medalists, like really high level. And not all of them, but many of them, I'm surprised when they get in business are still, to use your word, competing. They don't realize in business we could all win. Like it's not, you don't have to crush that person. Like I don't and so I could see how growing up in the family you grew up in, you've defined competition that way. I win, you lose. I grew up in challenge, which is I just want to get this thing I said I was going to get done.
And that is something that enriches you as a person.
Yeah.
When you set out challenges and you accomplish challenges, nobody can take that from you.
Yeah.
When your kid set out a challenge, whatever it is, you agree on a challenge, it's so important that you do have challenges. Even if it is with your kid for 7 days, you're not going to ask me for any sweets. Like, let's see if you have the mindset of a champion. You achieve that challenge, you can pick any dessert you want for a meal. You can have a whole meal of dessert. So then they're training, okay, well, they might not even want that meal of dessert, but they're training to set out challenges. And then they're starting realizing, well, oh, wow, I'm capable of achieving things. I'm capable of, going further than I thought. And it's interesting that you made that connection with business because it's so true. And that's why people are so competitive in business in a way that they become miserable. So then you find success and you just can't find happiness because it's never enough, because you're always comparing yourself to the next person. Or how many competitive athletes you see struggling to make transitions after they retire because their identity is entirely based on competing with somebody else instead of setting up challenges. Okay, well, now you're not competing anymore. What's your next challenge? And they have such a hard time. So challenges are something that drive human nature. It literally drives our species forward.
We're going to build a landing page on our website if you're willing. The talk, is it a challenge or is it a competition? I'd love to, because I never really talked about this. So I have 700 podcasts and it took a Gracie to bring up this topic. So no, I'm glad. How do people find you?
Cesalina.com, my website, Instagram, Cesa Gracie. And I post a lot of content there.
Yeah. What could we do for you? Send more women to the club, I guess.
Yeah. And I think, if everyone who wants to organize workshops in their town, so gather groups of friends, send me an email, and it's like, hey, can we host a women empowerment workshop in our city? It can be mother-daughter, it can be girls, but I think the more we spread the word, the more we get people in that space and women operating under that mindset of, I am proud of the space that I occupy here, and just shift, how they present themselves in the world. We have a ripple effect for society in general.
We're going to bring you to Florida if you have a reason to come to Florida. I'm in a place called Lake Nona right now. My friend owns the whole town. I think they would love a female empowerment, especially coming from a Gracie. Some sort of clinic or something over a weekend would be amazing.
Let's do that. I would love to.
And then we got to get you out to a race, a challenge, not a competition. I would lose. We'll get you out there, and I think you could inspire a lot of women. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I get, hey, I'm back with my husband, I'm back with my wife, I lost 200 pounds, I gave up drugs, I gave up drinking, I didn't kill myself. And so you would be an amazing spokesperson for people that maybe aren't on the mat or don't have, some other outlet to motivate. And I give away tickets for I just want to help people. So there's no dog in the fight here where I'm asking for something. I think we just got to get more people out.
Yeah, let's do it. It's so important because when you go through challenges, as we talked about, when you realize what you're capable of, you become a better person. You become a better mother, you become a better father, you show up differently in the world. And that's why you can never stop challenging yourself. What you've done with Spartan Race is incredible. I'm sure you've changed so many lives for that reason. It's an internal transformation. I would love to be a part of it. I haven't done a Spartan Race yet. I hope
That's
I
it.
make it to the end.
You'll get to the finish line. Don't worry, you'll be fine.
That would be epic.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming along. You're great.